All right, in this video, we're going to dive into the practice section of GTO Wizard. So now we're in this middle section. And when you click on this practice section, it's going to bring you to this main dashboard here. So we have a few options. We can use the trainer, which is us playing against the GTO opponent. We can practice our range construction using this range builder. We can have training drills here, so we can look at our drills. We can review different practiced hands. We can review practice sessions, and we can look at our overall performance. And there's this nice little dashboard which gives you a sense of all of the different things we've practiced. How many moves have we had? How many mistakes have we had? What's our GTO Wizard score? So you see there's various levels here. There's the best, which is the optimal score of playing a particular spot. But then there's things that we did well. We may have lost a little bit of EV or may not have been the optimal play. So a good example of that is, maybe we had multiple bet size options and we chose bet a third as opposed to the optimal play would have been bet a half. Bet a third may be fine. And we actually may have either not lost any EV or not lost much EV, which makes it technically correct, but maybe not the best possible option there too. And then there's inaccuracies, wrongs, or blunders, and we'll get into all of those shortly. What we're going to do is we're going to start with this trainer section here, and we're going to look at the trainer and how to actually play utilizing the trainer. So what this trainer does, and it actually lets you play scenarios. So you're gonna I'll go through these options right here. So we this controls tab here on the left hand side of the screen gives you a sense of how we can actually configure this particular setup here. So first and foremost, we have the options to work through the scenario itself, right? So we can jump to study this spot, which, I'll go through this in a second, but I showed you before we had the option of when we were in study, there was this little controller icon, which is signifying practice. We can jump to actually the controller icon to jump to practice it. Now we can jump back here if we want to look at this, let's say we're doing this particular scenario here and we have this spot of queen 3 and the cutoff, and we want to just study the cutoff versus big blind overall, what we're supposed to do overall. We can click this button here and it'll bring us back to the study window, and we can actually study this spot from there. We can advance or stop the session or do whatever we want here. Oftentimes when we're actually practicing ourselves, we may want to simulate an in-game environment. And especially if you're playing online, you're used to playing multiple tables. You can do that here, right? So if you want, let's say you want to play, 4 tables, I click 4 and it opens up this window where we have 4 different games we can play at the same time. Again, really, really, really cool functionality here that we can utilize within GTO Wizard. I'll go back to 1 just so it's actually a little easier to look at. There's this game mode here, which lets us play a full hand. So this is, the truest form of practice, which lets us practice, an entire situation. We can play one street, or we can play one decision point. I have this here as one decision point, but again, you can kind of customize this however you like. The difficulty here, this is showing how we want to simplify this from a bet size perspective. So standard is all of our sizing options. Grouped is grouping similar bet and raise sizes, and then simple is just, are we choosing, is this a bet or is this a call? Again, if you want to play something like simple, it's really good for quick decisions, seeing if you get a sense of in general how should your range be constructed at equilibrium. Standard is giving you a little bit more customization in terms of and nuance in terms of determining, should you be betting large, should you be betting small, and so on and so forth. The input mode is letting you either choose one single action, or on a frequency standpoint, you can set the frequency of each action separately. So this gives you a little bit more customization here, and then you can choose to pause this game, whether you don't want it to pause, or you can pause after a mistake, or after just every individual action to see the result of your play. This is how I usually set it up, or sometimes I switch this game mode around, but I usually set it up something like this, and maybe play 2 tables around here to show how you actually want to set up your gameplay itself. And on the bottom left here, it's going to show you your stats. So you can see your stats accumulate over time. Well, first let's configure this session. So I click this gear button, and we've already had this cutoff versus big blind spot loaded, but we can customize this all we want. So this is looking at pre-flop spots. Suppose I want to look at, let's look at flop spots, and we're gonna take this to the flop, and we're gonna say cutoff versus big blind, single raise pots, and the hero, we are gonna be in positions here, and we're only gonna look at this cutoff here. But again, you can customize this however you like. So custom being, let's say you want to start later on in the hand or at a different spot, you can start wherever you want. You can choose whatever pre-flop action that you want. You can choose multiple of these, right? So maybe I want to look at cutoff and button together, and let's actually do that, because that'll make it somewhat interesting for us. Relative hero position, do I want to look at this as in a situation where the hero is out of position or in position? And then in this alternate positions, you can actually go back and forth, or you can just keep this as one spot. You can also customize, do you want to look at specific board types, right? So this is, you only want to study monotone boards in a particular example, like you can click monotone and it will only show you monotone boards. This hands actually is really interesting here, because you can look at the entire range, and this is basically all of our range, or you can only just look at close decisions, right? So I don't need to practice a situation where I have top set. Am I betting or am I not betting, right? And that might be a bad example here, because especially when we get to flops and we have a lot of different bet sizes. There is a lot of nuance there. But a better example might be is if you're practicing pre-flop. I don't need to practice if I'm opening aces pre-flop. I don't need to practice if I'm folding 7 deuce offsuit pre-flop. Maybe I only want to look at close decisions there, and if that's the case there, I can only look at close decisions, and it will only give me the hands that are on the thresholds. The modes here, this gives me, I can choose a little bit more detail on what I showed here on the controls. So I'm going to customize this actually, so we can actually show you how this actually works in this particular gameplay scenario here. But we're going to look at 2 tables. I'm going to look at just the spots. We'll keep the difficulty as standards. The input mode will just be actions. We're going to pause the game after a mistake. The game speed will be, we'll just keep turbo on as now. The auto new hand will be instant. These are cool because this gives you a sense of, if you really want to simulate a game, you can actually choose the number of hands that you actually want to play, and you can choose a time bank, which this is one of my favorite parts, is you can choose the time bank. So if you're an online player, this is really simulating your practice. If you have seen any work from Kevin Rabashow, particularly I've mentioned this through the Solver Masterclass before, but the game plan, he is very big on purposeful practice, and this is allowing you to set up purposeful practice, right? So we spend all of our time studying different spots in solvers. We want to be able to drill ourselves and practice and make sure that we not only just are looking at them and hoping that we learn through osmosis. We want to drill those into us, because when we practice things, that's a better way for us to actually learn things, right? So, this gives us a sense of, we can actually set up these drills after we actually study something to really make sure that we're practicing, those particular spots. And then there's different things that we can actually customize here on the display. When you're done, you can actually save in different spots. So maybe I want to look at this, and I'll just save this real fast as cutoff, button, in single raise pot, flop versus big blind. And we save that, and now we created a drill which we can go and access later on. So let's start it out, and we'll just play a few hands, and we'll take a look at the data that is being generated by GTO Wizard. So you'll see here now we've started 2 spots, and we don't have a time bank, so I can actually look at this through, and we can take our time with this here. But what we can start seeing is deciding how we might actually play in some of these spots. And I'll give you a spoiler. I'm not an expert on playing 6 max online 100 big blind gameplay, so I'm sure that there are going to be spots I'm gonna mess up here, but that's kind of part of the game here. We'll just go through like ace jack. We have a top pair, pretty wet board. I think we're gonna be betting here, probably going to be betting for a little bit of a bigger size as compared to, so my guess it's going to be either betting 4.1 or 2.75. I'll just go with 4.1 for now. We'll go back over here, check or bet. My guess here, in this case we're just betting our flush draw, so we're just going to put bet. Again, check or bet here with the weaker flush draw. I'm going to choose bet. In this spot here, queen 4, ace 6 5. I'm guessing we're not going to be betting our full range here, so I'm actually going to check this one back. We don't have any backdoor draws. King 7, we're facing a lead here in this spot, so King 7, we don't have any backdoors. We do have the 3 straight here and 1 overcard. It's a small bet. These are ones that I'm usually kind of poor on here, and I probably overfold, but I'm going to fold this. You see, actually I got that one right, because what it's going to do is going to give you win streaks if you actually get things right. All right, 5-4 here. My guess is we're actually going to check this one back, so we'll check that one. Back over to this side, we have an open-ended straight draw, 1 overcard, backdoor flush draw. And actually, as I'm going through here, I'm realizing now that I may not have set stack sizes, so we actually have differing stack sizes here, which is fine. I mean, like this is more actually like an MTT type thing where early stage of a tournament, we're 200 big blinds deep here. Would we be betting here? I think we'd be betting, and probably be betting for a larger sizing there. Now we're 20 big blinds deep here with pocket 8s. Are we betting here and betting for a small amount? I actually do think we bet this against the big blinds, so we bet that. And actually it's a loss, so that's a loss streak on there too. We'll play a couple more hands of this here just to kind of show how this is the action here, and then we can pause and take a look at our performance so far. So 40 big blinds deep, which actually, as I'm saying here, now that these stack sizes are alternating here, it's more interesting to take a look at it like this. The 40 big blinds deep, we're gonna check back this queen jack, 10-8 here, ace king 6. I think we're gonna 75 big blinds deep, we're going to check back that. This here, 8-7-6, 75 big blinds deep, pocket jacks. I think we're betting here. 9-8, king 8 deuce. This is probably pretty close, but I'll check back that. So let's just kind of, we've done a little bit here, so we've probably done about 12 to 15, 12 hands here or so. So we have a hand counter, we have our win streak, we can see what we've done so far. I click back the controls, and it gives you kind of this window here, so showing us the breakdown of this. So we played 12 hands, we have 12 moves. You can see my score is 60%. Of my moves, I've only actually had the best move on 3 of the 12 moves, right? Like 8 of them are correct moves, right? So something that is used in a mix, right? So it's GTO uses at least 3.5% times, but it's not the best move. The best move is the highest frequency action. And then an inaccuracy is something that GTO just doesn't use at all. So, and it'll give me a sense of my total EV loss, the average loss per hand, and so on and so forth. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop this session, and I guess I didn't do that great on this, right? So maybe I thought I did a little bit better than I did, right? But I also, thought I actually set up a different scenario than I actually did here. But I set up a scenario where the stack sizes are different. So it took me a few hands to realize actually that the stack sizes are a little bit variable there. So, lesson number 1 there is make sure that you do have the stack size set in for you. Otherwise, it's gonna, if you include all stack sizes, it will vary things a little bit there too. I can click on this show, either whether my worst spot, my best spot, or I can show the history. And the history here is going to open up on the right hand side, and it's going to show me the individual hands that I played, right? So, you know, and what I can do is I can drill into any of these. So I'm going to actually go to my mistake. Well, first, actually, let's go into this, you know, this 9-8 here on King 8-2, right? Because it says I had a correct, but not the best spot here. So I can expand this, and what it's going to show here is that it's going to give you a little snapshot of this, right? So I can, you know, take a picture with the analysis of my hand. I can replay the hand. It's showing me this is Nolan Hold'em cash. I had 9-8 offsuit. Pre-flop, I was in the button. I raised, and the big blind called. The big blind checked, and as the button, it looks like it mixed here, and you know, this was what I was between, right? Was checking or betting small, and I chose to check here. And you know, again, this is not showing it. It's showing it's not really a mistake here. It's 3.57 EV versus 3.58 EV. Both of them are options that are chosen at equilibrium here. So, you know, this is a correct move, but it is not the optimal move in this gameplay. But I'm okay with this one, right? Like this is an okay spot. Whereas, you know, I can do that for all of these, right? Like, so, you know, jacks here. I chose a large bet here where, you know, actually GTO Wizard, you know, prefers the medium-sized bet as the best, right? So I can kind of analyze through each of these. I can go back to the 8s on this 10-4-3, and we can see that GTO Wizard, I chose to bet it, and you know, I think I only had one option here. Actually, GTO Wizard combined them here too, so I just chose a bet, and that was the only betting option I had here. But really, it looks like GTO Wizard prefers the check more so than that. I thought I remember this is only one bet size here in the actual example itself, which was somewhat interesting, but that's okay. You know, but what I can do is if I have a spot that I really want to dive into a little bit more, so I'm not going to do this one because it's only 20 big blinds, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this 9-8 spot because it was 100 big blinds, and I can click this study this spot section, and this is really cool because if there's, you know, if I dig into my review of my session, and I want to study it a little bit more, I can click this icon, and it will take me to a new tab, which is key. I love this new tab feature because I still have my training session here, but now I have a new tab where GTO Wizard has pre-populated a study session for me, where I am looking at what I do as the big blind on a King 8 Deuce two-tone board. Awesome. Like, this is so cool, right? Like, this is, you know, a way I can jump from training mode straight to study mode. And I can go reverse on this too, right? So, like, you know, I'll just go back to, let's go rewind back to the beginning here. And let's say I'm looking at just cutoff versus big blind call. We'll just look at a Jack 7-6 board. Out of position checks here, and I want to study this spot. Well, I can just click this controller icon as I showed you in the study. Again, new tab, and now I'm in the trainer, and the trainer is showing I am looking at, just kind of show the spot that I'm looking at here. I am looking at cutoff versus big blind, right? So I can see in the window here, this is cutoff raise, big blind call, Jack 7-6. I can start practicing off of this particular exact spot. This is my favorite functionality here. I can jump back and forth between study and practice mode very, very, very easily here. That's essentially kind of the view, and we already looked at the stats. This is the trainer view. I'll skip the range builder because I'll come back to that in a second here. The drills, if I click on the drills here, what that's going to do is it can take you to the saved drills that you have. So, you know, for me, I have done this a little bit in the MTT format already. So I've saved a few drills here in MTT. That was the first one that I saved right there for cash play. But, you know, and I can go start from this and edit, right? So, like, let's say just right away, I want to go into this this cutoff versus big blind view. I want to edit this drill a little bit because what I realized was the stack sizes that I set here is, you know, I was a little off on the stack sizes here, and I actually don't like the fact that my stack sizes were a little bit off. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to find the stack size here, and this is where I have to change this to basically say I want to only look at the effective stack size of 100. I had this set up as effective stack size of any, and it was showing all of these different scenarios. So now I've changed my drill so that my stack is 100. I can save this, and now my drill was updated to show, now it's only going to show 100 big blind spots going forward from here. So this drill section is a way for you to actually, build drills and manage the drills that you have built already. And you can go back and analyze things based off of the drills that you've actually created. The hands is going to show you every single thing that you've actually drilled in the past, right? So, I'm going through this right now, and I'm looking at the cache things that I've drilled into my practice. When I was using GTO Wizard a lot earlier this year, I was using MTT, right? So you can see the MTT drills that I was utilizing, in my particular studies there. So hands, I can actually go review practiced hands. Sessions, I can go take the various sessions that I have and how I actually studied those, and take a look at my score, my EV loss, and so on and so forth here, right? So this practice section lets me look at that, and then my stats, looking at overall performance, and it gives me a sense of how I've done over time, and I can drill into this and take a look at, well, how have I done on single raise pots, 3-bet pots, 4-bet pots, 5-bet pots, and so on and so forth. And I haven't spent a ton of time drilling into the practice sections here, but these sections are really, really, really useful to be able to, when you set up your solves and you want to drill in and practice them yourself, this optionality is here for you here. The last thing I'll drill into on the practice section in terms of the how-tos is the range builder. So the range builder is a really, really cool piece of functionality. And I want to spend a couple minutes diving into this. If you've had a coaching session with me, or if you've worked with me in coaching sessions before, you'll know that I like putting people through can sometimes be a painful exercise of range construction. And, it's not meant to be like a realistic thing of something that you have to do in game. But what I'm trying to drill across is, we're not just playing one hand, we're playing our whole range. And, while we are playing one hand in a game, it's useful to have a sense of how the whole range wants to play against your opponent's particular range. So I often put my clients through drills where it's a homework assignment where we take a formation, we take a spot, and you have to assign every single hand in your range to an action, right? And sometimes that could be for pre-flop, right? So if you're just like looking at, do we want to raise, call, or fold? Sometimes that's for post-flop, where it's a lot more specific in terms of how we actually construct a betting and checking ranges here. And that's what this feature and functionality lets you do. So what you can do is you can pick a difficulty level, and this just relates to how many bet sizes you want, right? So like easy here is going to basically just break it into bet check, whereas medium is bet large, bet medium, bet small, and then hard gives you actually like all of the different bet sizes here. I'll just choose easy here just to kind of demonstrate this here, and we can start building. And when I have this set up as a pre-flop scenario, you're essentially just building pre-flop ranges. So, in this case here, I am looking at trying to build out cash 200 big blind under the gun opening range. So what I am here set to do is I have to kind of build out this range. So what I'm going to do here is, you can see, I clicked here and it gave me a 2/3 raise, 1/3 fold. That's because I've set this up here already. This is set up as a split. What I want to do here first is just bring this out to be 100% raise and 0% fold, so that when I click on something like aces, I'm always raising aces. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just kind of build out a range here, and we are going to guess as to what our opening range is going to be at 200 big blinds deep from under the gun. And, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give, and this is from a low jack position, I'm going to give essentially what my opening range would look like if I'm playing we'll call it a live game. And, and this is from the low jack spot. I know that the GTO Wizard is going to be a little bit tighter than this, but it's essentially I'm trying to give a sense of how these are going to diverge a little bit, and then we can kind of just demonstrate essentially what this functionality looks like here. So I am going to, this is probably going to be about my opening range. I mean, I think, if we want to get a little, accurate about this, I probably would be like, starting to like split around here. I might start, this is depending on game flow and gameplay. I might start kind of like, being a little bit kind of iffy around there as to like whether I'm opening, some of these hands or not. But this maybe feels right in that spot. But either way, I'm going to pick my strategy here. And once I pick my strategy and I feel comfortable with my, range construction here, I can just click See Results. And what that's going to do, and it's going to tell me, click here to validate your strategy. I click Confirm, and it's pretty close, right? So like, I probably, and I missed the Queen Jack offsuit there, right? So like maybe I'm going to start kind of opening that a little bit. Looks like I'm, probably not from an equilibrium standpoint, not opening up ace two suited, right? But like, again, I'm pretty close here to, this from a GTO perspective in terms of building out an overall range. Let's just try this again. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a, we're going to go under the gun raise. We're going to go big blind call. We'll stick with the Queen 9-5 board, and we'll say the big blind is checking, and we have to choose how we are going to build out our strategy here. So I'm gonna, this time I'm gonna keep it easy, right? Again, right, because we're not gonna worry about bet sizing here, although we can, and then we can start building in this spot. And now we have a little bit of a different option here, right? So as the under the gun player, now we have to determine how often are we c-betting this board, and what are we c-betting and what are we checking? So again, I'm going to kind of bring this to 100%, and I'm going to say that and we'll kind of give this at a high level, but I'm betting. We're going to bet all of our sets. Queens, nines, and fives. We are going to bet our two pairs, Queen 9. We are going to be betting all of our, really queen. We'll basically be betting all of our queens. Nines is probably where we start kind of, mixing a little bit there. But, we can kind of start building out our strategy here of how much we want to bet and how much we want to actually check. And I'm not going to go through and do all of this now, because what you start recognizing is that this takes a while, right? So like, as I start getting in here, I'm going to start recognizing that some of these hands that I'm going to bet are going to be backdoor draws, right? So like maybe I'm going to always bet something like Jack tens, right? Because I have the open and straight draw here. But other hands like like ace six suited here, right? So ace six suited or ace eight suited in that spot there. Maybe I bet the ones with the backdoor draws and I check the one that are clubs, right? When I don't have the backdoor draws, right? I'm always going to be betting like aces and kings. There are going to be other spots here where the suits are going to matter of what I actually bet and what I don't bet here, and that's where I'm going to change my strategy and get very specific as to constructing my particular range here. But the exercise is the same. Once I go through this, I get to something that I'm comfortable with, and then I confirm to validate my strategy, and GTO Wizard is going to evaluate from an equilibrium standpoint what is the equilibrium solution here. So that about does it for the practice section. I mean, as you can see, there's a lot in here, right? There's a lot you can actually do. Admittedly, I actually haven't spent as much time on the practice section as I probably should. This is actually something that I need to get better at myself on, and GTO Wizard has the tools to be able to shift and very easily from studying and back and forth, pretty seamlessly. So I definitely would recommend that you play around with the practice tool that they have there. I'd also absolutely recommend that you utilize practice mode, right? So if I go back to kind of the this practice mode tab here, we already went through basically everything in study mode, but practice mode gives you a sense of everything in here, as well as this section around training ideas. And I'm going to click on training ideas real fast to show you this. There's different ways in which we can actually show you how you can actually use this practice mode to really diversify the different ways in which you're utilizing this to train using GTO Wizard. So with that said, let's wrap up this section on practice, and I will see you in this next video where we dive into the analyze section. And then with that, after we finish the analyze section, we are going to just jump into more use case driven videos there. So I'll see you in the next video.